Hello and welcome to another episode of The Slip Cordon. I'm Isabel Joyce, and this week I'm joined by USA Women's head coach Julia Price and cricket commentator Mel Jones. Welcome, guys.
Hey there.
Hey, great to join you.
Thanks so much for coming on. Now, I have just introduced you as the women's coach of USA, Pricey, but you do a few other things outside of that. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. I'm doing a little bit of commentary as well for WBBL with Channel 7 and also for the internationals, particularly coming up this year, hopefully. We've got our fingers crossed about New Zealand series, T20s and one days starting in sort of late September. So doing a little bit of that as well, which is good. And also doing a few of these podcasts that help out with spreading the word of women's cricket around the world. So that's pretty much where I'm at the moment.
And last year you were assistant coach for a men's BBL team as well.
Forgot about that. Yep. Yeah. So I helped out with the Brisbane Heat in the BBL as well as assistant coach. It was a really good experience just to see what it's like in the men's program, and obviously being under Darren Lehman as the head coach. It was again also seeing, his nickname's Buff, but he's so not a buff. He's a big softy. And very, very caring. And it's in fact was a very similar experience to coaching a female team, actually. We always talk about the differences in male and female teams, but I don't know, I just sort of, it was interesting, more the professionalism and maybe the understanding all the male players of their own game. That was probably the key difference for me. But my input was just probably trying to get the guys' understanding of the game from a female perspective and how we look at it. And I think they actually enjoyed having some of those conversations because it was a slightly different perspective. And obviously a few of the rules in our games are slightly different to theirs as well. So we're constantly trying to adapt our game, where the men's game is fairly rigid and straightforward. And, they sort of have to stick by the traditional rules, where I think of the women's games where we're a little bit more flexible and try to make things a little bit more fun and easy going. So, but yeah, good fun. I really enjoyed that time with the boys and a big learning experience for me.
Yeah, something for traditionalists to take on, but it doesn't have to be exactly like it was 200 years ago for it to be cricket. And Mel, your commentating probably has been a little bit paused at the moment with everything that's going on. What have you been doing to keep busy?
Well, unfortunately here in Melbourne, we're day one of another 6-week lockdown. So keeping busy will be very much an online experience for me at the moment. So yeah, 6 months pretty much of no work, so sort of stuck in Melbourne. We've done a few webinars with the ICC, which was quite a fun series called 100% Cricket, which Pricey was nice enough to come on for the first episode, I think it was. We start big, and then
yeah, it was downhill from there. Yeah.
We do the opposite on this podcast. We go big like 5th episode, so that's what
we're the first one. Yeah.
And good timing, I got on the board of Cricket Australia 5-6 months ago, and I spoke to the chairman, Earl Eddings, about 10 months ago, and he said, oh, look, free lunches and trips around the world, that's what directors do. And in the space of 6 months, we've had bushfires, T20 World Cups, and now COVID. So it's been a real roller coaster ride to start my directorship.
Yeah, so training, basically they say train hard, play easy. So first 6 months you get everything thrown at you, and then you'll be a pro. Right, we're going to just... Who's that's joining us, Pricey?
This would be Austin. So that's one of my other jobs is looking after animals and stopping them killing each other. So it's not just humans in my house that want to kill each other because of COVID lockdown, the cat and the 2 dogs. It's all happening. Dog's taken over the cat seat, so he's not happy, so he's sitting on me now.
We're just going to go into something a little bit different now. You both played for the Australian women's team, and were very successful at doing that. And your first trip to Ireland playing cricket was in 1998. What were your impressions when you first came over of Irish cricket?
Of Irish cricket was probably different to our just impressions of touring. I think it was. I remember we. How loose can we be on this podcast?
Well, I mean, things were different back then. I suppose everyone.
We're a little bit. We just finished playing a 5 one-day international series against England. So we just finished up beating them 5-0 at Lord's. So we'd come off a pretty good celebration, you could say, as we arrived in Ireland. And so we'd sort of gone from, there was a fairly long build up to that as well. And the thing that I sort of remember is we arrived at the airport and we were getting billeted out. This is how long ago it was for women's cricket. So we got billeted by a variety of different families and groups in Irish cricket. And I can remember it was almost like school camp where we were all sort of standing there sort of looking at these people thinking, who are we going to get? You know, one, who are we going to get roomed with from our own team? And two, who are the people that were going to take us on? And Pricey and I were very, very happy that we got Karen Rolton and Lisa Keitel. We're in the doghouse, meaning that the couple that looked after us had a dog, so it was easy enough to recognise. But it was that was the first thing, and probably
I just thought it was because Roltz was in, so we're calling it the doghouse.
Well, okay, getting that loose. All right then.
I thought it was because you'd been in trouble from your celebrations after the England games.
Yeah, in the doghouse, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think my parents billeted a couple of people, but I wasn't there at the time, so I came home and found a couple of yellow pads in the wardrobe that had been hidden there by whoever didn't want to take them home.
Well, you were probably still at school.
I was actually at Irish College when you guys were there. It was where we just have to speak Irish the whole time. I don't know if you know that's a thing, but it's to help you learn Irish for school.
Because that's going to be useful.
Well, it is when you're abroad with Irish people and you don't want people to know what you're saying, but other than that, no. Anyway, yeah, so you came and you were staying with 3 other people, and how was the cricket? Other than, I know you had a good time, you went to the pub a bit, no doubt you were hosted really well, but the level of cricket was that, you know, you guys were taking it, you were very professional at the time, considering it wasn't a professional game compared to the Irish team.
Yeah, I remember it was we still wanted to beat you guys, definitely, and the standard of it was outstanding. It's such a good culture of cricket in Ireland. Obviously I've been back a lot of times since then, but yeah, it certainly wasn't any easy wins, but what we liked is the spirit of the game, that how it was played, super competitive but very, very fair. But I do remember, I think it was the last game at Marion, and I can't remember, someone went off to hospital first because I think they got hit in the head, and then I know Schiller's then got a split of webbing, and then she went off to hospital. So it was sort of like a bit of an endless stream of players going. But at the same time, the fight was outstanding, and everyone came back for beers later after the game. And it was just, it sort of felt how cricket should be. You know, it was a really hard few games against you guys, and a really good lead-in for us going into a test series as well, straight after that when we went back to England. But I don't think there was anyone that didn't enjoy their time in Ireland, other than our physio, who was still struggling to recover from the celebrations at Lord's, and was given an Irish whiskey on arrival at her billeted house, and was chewing it so badly she did not want to throw up in front of her new billet, which was hilarious. And we still give her grief about it today.
The other thing too was that I did my hamstring in the Lord's game, so I arrived in Ireland injured, and that's probably why it took me so long to recover from the injury, because I don't think our physio had any capabilities of figuring out what to do at all. But I'm absolutely gobsmacked that Pricey hasn't mentioned that she might have had a bowl in one of the games.
I forgot about that. All 7 balls were great.
On your Wikipedia, it says you bowled 1 over. Was that
right?
That?
And I got a catch at point. So it actually says I've got 99 one-day dismissals, when in fact that's 100. That's 1 in the field as well. So, you know, just nice and tidy.
Fielders don't get to claim their dismissals, okay? Just so you know.
Yeah. Anyway, and that was at Trinity. I remember that actually, because I remember we used to have to face the sun because they had the pitch going the wrong way. It was a nightmare. But anyway, and we might have had a streaker that day as well. So it was all happening because they were all they just finished college or uni or whatever, and they were all just streaming out into the sun for the 10 minutes that you guys get every summer, and it was absolutely heaving. It was great fun. It was a really good atmosphere.
Yeah, it's brilliant playing Trinity, apart from when the ball goes in the air towards the crowd and you get that moment of who's going to die. Yeah. Nobody's watching the match. But you mentioned, Pricey, you came back to Ireland a few times after that. It wasn't long after that you came as a club pro, I think.
Yeah, well, I think John Harmer was at with you guys in '99, and then I came over in 2000 or 2000 after the World Cup, or leading into the World Cup. So yeah, and it was brilliant fun. I had an absolute ball, purely because I was still even though I was playing for Australia, I was still learning my game. And in Ireland, you guys it was game after game after game, and playing at Marion as well. You know, I was welcomed into the men's teams as well, so I could play the touring games. I played in, you know, all the grade cricket as well, and so it was just constant cricket. And the more I played, the more I learned about what my limitations were and also what my strengths were. So I definitely became a better cricketer after being in Ireland for that season, and also a better drinker as well.
Well, we had to give you something. But yeah, I mean, I was in that team, obviously, that you came over and played club cricket with, and we were all very young. So I'm glad you had the men's team to hang out with as well. But I have a lasting memory of you, because we used to just have, it's not a bad thing, don't worry. We used to have, like, people from, we used to have people from
Mel may have just hinted at that memory, but anyway. Yeah. A bit of a scar on the face.
Yeah. I was too young to remember that, but the umpires were just club members basically, so they didn't necessarily know what they were doing. And I just remember playing a game in Clontarf, which is my current club, and the umpire wouldn't give a wide because you'd played a shot at the ball and you had an argument with him. And I mean, you were completely right, obviously. He said if you play a shot it can't be wide, which isn't a thing. And I actually remember thinking, like, oh, like, we can question men. Cool. Because I didn't really know before then that you could, like, you just did whatever you were told. Yeah, so that was a big learning experience for me outside of the cricket. So thank you for that, Julia. And all the guys that I question and don't accept things from since then will be very thankful for it to you as well.
And I may have questioned your father on a couple of occasions as well, now I think about it, because he did umpire us as well.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, and should have been done as well. Although I'm glad he doesn't watch podcasts. So how difficult was it going from playing for both of you now, playing to your lives afterwards? Because that's a big part of you know, what people struggle with now is retiring from international cricket and moving on. We'll go to you first, Mel.
I didn't plan anything. This is going to sound really, really bad, though. I think for us in the time in which we were playing as well, is that we trained professionally, but we weren't professional by any stretch of the imagination. So never got paid. So everyone had jobs of some description back home. You know, a variety of people went through university and were sort of transitioning as they were playing. So everyone had sort of a vision post-playing of where they're going to go in terms of work stuff. Julia and I were slightly different in that space because we tried to avoid full-time work, and so we spent, you know, our winters overseas working within cricket. Julia, as she mentioned, in Ireland and in Scotland and the Netherlands. I was in South Africa for 3 years, and then with Surrey cricket for 3 years. So we sort of did that cycle for a number of years, and it was for me, it was a bit of happenstance, really. I got dropped from the Aussie team for an Ashes tour. And that's when I got asked to do a commentary game. It was the first time that the ECB were doing broadcast of a women's game with Sky Sport. And I can remember them asking if I wanted to commentate on the game. And I said, not a chance. I said, why would I want to do that? This is the game I want to be playing in, not, you know, commentating on. And they said, we'll pay you 300 quid. And I said, tell me where, when and what to wear. And I thought, how cool is this? I'm getting paid more than what the players are playing in this international. And I felt like the commentators on it just were getting punished for doing a women's game. And it wasn't an overly enjoyable experience by any stretch of the imagination. But it was my first one. I sort of got my foot in the door. So over the next I think it was 2001, over the next 8 years up until the ICC World Cup in Australia in 2009, when the ICC took things over, it was just basically a hobby. So I sort of had that on the side. I was teaching and working with Cricket Victoria at the same sort of time. So I think it was nice for the fact that I could still commentate and have my finger in the game a little bit and being attached to it. So I didn't feel as if I was just completely removed from the game once I sort of finished playing for Australia.
So it's amazing the opportunities that are kind of coming out of it now that you never would have thought when you're probably playing. So brilliant to have you in such high profile positions. And Pricey, what about you? I know you're like Mel said, you were you know, kind of working to play rather than working towards a particular career. How did you come upon coaching?
Well, yeah, it financed financed my life for quite a while. Obviously overseas and starting to grow the game and coaching and yeah, I suppose it was actually just to get by initially. But at the same time, the being able to coach while you're playing, I really found it helped with my game as well. Again, like I said, I started quite late. Felt like I was doing catch up for most of my career, and by coaching, you're sort of reaffirming all these points that are actually good for your own game as well. So I sort of found that it was helping me a fair bit, and obviously it helped me to travel and earn some money and go overseas every off season. But I was pretty lucky. I got to play in a celebrity AFL game at the Gabba one night, and spoke to the AFL people here in Queensland, and 2 years later, the bloke that I was speaking to that night gave me a call and said, "Look, we're looking to grow the game, and we think your experiences that you've had overseas in developing nations of cricket, it's very much what we want trying to do with women's football in Queensland for the AFL. Would you be interested in a full-time job?" And fortunately or unfortunately, obviously, my mother had just got sick at the same time, and I'd just been dropped from the Australian team as well. So it was sort of perfect time to stop going overseas and actually, do real work and have a proper job. And I was 6 years with the AFL, still doing side coaching for cricket, still loved cricket and was, sort of still playing for Queensland at that stage. But it was a really good experience working with the AFL and trying to grow women's AFL throughout the state and as well as the country, but also on various different levels, looking at umpiring and looking at getting, Indigenous girls involved in the program and looking at, juniors rules and, just high performance. It was sort of just everything. And it was a really good setup for me eventually to go to Tasmania after I was completely exhausted from trying to grow the game of football in Queensland. So it's all been a bit like Mel is, it's a little bit serendipitous, some of the things that happened. They just seem to sort of, you just keep falling into them and meeting good people and not necessarily networking. That sounds a bit wanky, but yeah, that's where I've ended up. And it's been a really fun journey.
I'd say re-educating rather than networking. Like if you're willing to take things on and take on new experiences, then that's going to bring you to good places. Anyway, so you both played for the Roar, which is was the Tasmanian women's team, and then you coached there, Pricey, and now it's brought you to USA Cricket. So like you said, you're just kind of taking it as it comes. But I'm just going to jump back to Irish cricket here. Both of you mentioned that when you played, you trained like professionals, but you were amateurs basically. And it's a little bit like the countries outside the top, I want to say 8 or maybe 9, they have to train as hard as they can to try and keep up, but they're not getting paid much if they are getting paid at all. Do you think it's tougher now for them to stay up with full-time professional cricketers, or what's the way forward? Do you have any opinions on that? Don't know who wants to speak first.
Yeah, that's right. I think semi-professional sport is probably the worst space to be in as an athlete. I think when you're purely amateur, you know exactly where you're at because you're not getting money, you're training when you can, it's for the love of the game and all those sorts of things. And when you're purely professional, it's pretty simple too because your contract's there, you're getting paid this amount of money, programs and systems and resources are sort of set up for you. But when you're transitioning between the two, and hopefully it's from amateur to professional, not the other way around, it's there's just so many grey areas. And I think that makes it really tough for people sitting on both sides of the fence, that as the player, but that also as the administration, to try and juggle things and balance things and try and push the boundaries a little bit, but knowing that they can't always then provide the same amount of financial reward at that time, but hoping that if they do push the boundaries, they might be able to get a bit more financial reward to come and feed the system as it's going along. So I think, you need your best brains and your most passionate people in that semi-professional space to be able to have a vision of where you want to get to, obviously, which is the professional side, but how you're going to try and get there, and the flexibility to know that sometimes that path that you set might not be the exact one that you've laid out, but that you've still got your eyes on the prize, so to speak. And it becomes frustrating and difficult, and you need to make sure that you've got good people around you to keep backing the system as much as you possibly can. But it's a tricky one, and you see it on an international stage when you come to World Cups, when you're comparing the two between an Ireland and Australia, and the top teams and sort of those bottom sort of 3 to 4 nations at the moment who are going through that phase as well. But I think from anyone who's been involved in the women's game, which has seen that process, I think that's probably one of the most important things at the moment for us as a sport, is making sure that we can support those teams as much as we possibly can to get them out of that phase as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and so like Pricey, coming to you on the same kind of topic, it's no good for women's cricket in general if the top are earning everything and then there's your teams 9, 10, 11, 12 are struggling to, like, with part-time jobs just to keep playing cricket. So it's in the interest really of the top teams for those lower teams to get the funding that they need so that they can really compete and show the women's game the way that it should be shown at World Cups and at bilateral series.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing how many teams are actually playing. A lot of the member nations, we're pretty lucky, obviously, in Australia. You know, we've been in that sort of top 10 for a long time. You know, but there are so many countries that I'm like, they play cricket? That's unbelievable. But they're so keen and so passionate, and they all should be getting, you know, some good funding to be able to ensure that females are getting the same opportunities as males all around the world constantly, and starting to bridge that gap. And you can sort of see that happening a little bit. It used to just be sort of that top 8. And it's probably nearly stretched out to about top 15, I reckon now. Like from the qualifiers we had last year in Scotland improved enormously. One, because they've started domestic competition, which clearly makes a big difference. But you've also got Thailand and Bangladesh getting in there more regularly now. And we've got the Netherlands and obviously you guys sort of, you know, had after your retirement, obviously there's a little bit of a rebuild sort of in there. But, you know, the setup that you've got ensures that you guys will be up there for a long time. But that's what we've got to continue to do. And obviously in America, that's what we're going to be trying to look at as our domestic structure and how can we get more games constantly for the players. I mean, we can also look at the system in Australia, that a domestic system, and how to them being full time in inverted commas, are they getting, you know, is the distance between the Australian team and Australian players and domestic players getting further and further apart as well? And how are we ensuring that we've got players ready to go as soon as they get into the Australian setup? If they're only, you know, they're earning $40,000 a year and they can't really, you know, barely afford to pay their rent and feed themselves, you know, is that the way we need to go? Or do we need to be, you know, making sure that domestic level is also trying to keep up with that international level so that at least players can commit full time to it? So therefore it's an easier transition into the international program. So, and Mel, you'd probably be able to speak more about that than I would be. Obviously a board member of Cricket Australia, I won't steal your thunder, but you know, there's plenty of stuff that needs to happen
at the moment, so I can't comment.
Yeah, so I mean, hopefully the powers that be that provide some funding to the countries can see that that's the way forward. I mean, if that's what the top countries are saying, which is you guys in Australia and obviously the English players. I mean, the Irish team have just lost, you know, their best player in Kim Garth to, she's near you in Melbourne there, Mel, and Scotland have a couple of players that have gone down and taken contracts in England. So it's not what we want for the women's game. We don't need more polarization of the best talent into the biggest countries. But I'm going to just pivot away again now. What's your thoughts on Test cricket in the women's game? Do you think there's a future in that for women's Test cricket, or is the future 2020? We'll go with Pricey first this time.
Yeah, well, I'm not going the financial side on this. I'm going purely with heart, and that 1998 tour is one of my favourite tours ever. And we got to play a 3-test series against England, and it was so much fun. I felt like that was the first time I felt like a proper cricketer. You know, I'm on an Ashes tour. We're playing Test cricket. You know, it was just brilliant. And we play ours over 4 days, which, funny enough, the men are now looking at. So it's sort of nice they're learning from us. But the fact that it's just such a, and the reason why I play cricket is it's such a complex game, and there's so much thought that needs to go into it. And tactically, you know, I think playing Test cricket, you can bring that down into ODI, the tactical and strategic sort of side of it. And then from ODIs, you can bring it down to T20. They're all the same, but it's just how quick that we're doing it. So to me, I think Test cricket, and as we've seen with the Australian team, and the way that they've maybe done the format with it, keeping them all together. I think that's really made it interesting, exciting for all the teams to stay in it and keep that relevant. Whether it's a series on its own, I'm not sure how that would work, but I can't see why it also wouldn't be able to work. Particularly, you look at somewhere like India that's got so much love for the game and the numbers that they could get to see these sort of games happening. And also the reward for players in females that have always supported the men's game in Test cricket. So there's no real reason why females can't play Test cricket as well. I mean, there's no reason why they wouldn't enjoy it or be as successful in it.
Do you have anything to add to that, Mel?
Yeah, I'd say at the moment it's not looking likely in terms of a 3-test series kind of thing. But I certainly think that the multi-format Ashes series has a lot of support around the world. And if you can if you're touring and you're going to a country and you're playing 3 T20s and 3 one-dayers to add on another week to put in an Ashes series these days, and to put in a Test match, isn't too much of an impost. And what it does too, I think what we're finding as well is that it is allowing that true, as Pricey mentioned, that true skill set to come through as well. So we want to be able to see the quicks being allowed to bounce people. We want to see the art of spinners, setting up people, all those. We want to see captains really being stretched in a different way over, multiple days, all those sorts of things. We want to see batters trying to then work on a pitch, on a 4th-day pitch where it's turning more. We want to really see who are the best of the best in changing conditions all the time. And I think if that's put into that multi-match format, I think that makes for a pretty good series.
Yeah, I think the people are focusing so much on what's marketable, but it's not always about that. I mean, men's Shield cricket in Australia doesn't get huge numbers at all, but they still see the value in it. So I think the same can be said for women's Test cricket. Just going back to both of you working in the media, and you mentioned not enjoying maybe your first game, Mel. But in general, how have you found getting into media work? Has it been what you thought it would be? Have there been any challenges?
I didn't really think about it to start with because it wasn't a career plan in any stretch really right at the start. So you just you go along, you do as much prep as you can, you rock up, you hope you don't muck up too much on air, and then you get off and then you go back to work, and then another game would come up. It probably wasn't for me until 2009 Women's World Cup in Australia, where the ICC took over and they did, I think it was 8 of the ODIs during that series, where you thought, oh, this is pretty cool. If something happened down the track and, you might want to do a little bit more of it kind of thing. And then got the opportunity in 2015 to do the IPL with Isha Guha, Anjum Chopra and Lisa Sthalekar. And that was a big shift for a couple of reasons. One, because you could probably start to sense that there was an opportunity of doing a little bit more of it. 2, it was the first time you actually felt embraced by the broadcast community. I think all 4 of us going into a pretty male-dominated space thought that this was going to be really tough and we're getting a lot of backlash and it might not be enjoyable. And I can remember my first game on air, and we were, for the IPL, you'll have your lead and then your 2 experts, and I was in one of the expert seats, and the other expert was Mike Hazeman, a former Australian cricketer who's based in South Africa, the US now, but does a lot of work in South Africa. And we were both going for the mic at the same time kind of thing, and he just kept putting his mic down going, you go, keep going, get your thoughts out there kind of thing. And you just sat there and went, oh, that's kind of good. You didn't know if you're getting pranked or not, sort of thing, which I did get pranked by Scott Storris, but we'll forget that one. And then you'd finish the game and you'd go back to the hotel and you'd chat about the game, you'd have a couple of drinks, and then you're on the road show with them for the rest of the tournament. And it was then that you actually thought, yeah, it's that they're embracing you into their world in a really nice way.
And what about you, Pricey? Do you find it difficult juggling your coaching and commentating careers?
Not really, because they're sort of just the different sort of seasons. Obviously, USA Cricket, will be coming into their off season when we're coming into our WBBL stuff and internationals here, so that's good. But what I found, and I actually find it quite complimentary in the fact that
coaching and commentating, it's sort of very similar. You're constantly analysing the game and you're trying to work out strategy. And so I've actually found it really good to really get me thinking about what's the tactics that they're doing over here in T20 cricket or ODIs, and how I can introduce that or take it back to the USA and, keep up to date with all the coaching sort of stuff. So I found it's been really quite helpful with my own sort of career in coaching. So more than happy to do it. Didn't know what I was doing at all when I first started. And, you sort of get there and you think you've got to be some sort of commentator. And I'm trying to think, who am I trying to be? I don't even know what I'm doing. So I just ended up thinking, they kept saying, just be yourself. You don't really know who you're supposed to be. And then I thought, I had Staleka next to me, and I usually give her a fair bit of grief. And I thought, that's what I'll do. I'll just keep giving her grief. And it was perfect. They loved it. So I've just continued on that. I don't know if Lisa likes it so much, but I find it fun.
That is definitely you being you. Can I just suggest, maybe you can bring this to some kind of producers, I'm not sure, but can there just be a camera on Pricey when she's commentating, because her facial expressions are just the funniest, like the kind of, so I've actually a few times paused when they turn in on the commentary box and just taken a picture of Pricey's expressions, because you've never seen anyone who just lived their life through their face so much. So that's definitely, I think, an outtakes that they could look into.
We'll work on it this summer.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and they'll listen to you. You're a big shot. So, so just thank you so much for everything so far. Couple of last things from me. Any plans for the future? Or are you just going to keep flying by the seat of your pants, the two of you?
It's got us to this point.
Exactly. Yeah, at the moment, no, it's going. I've got a contract with USA Cricket till November, when the qualifiers have been moved forward to. But I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But I've really enjoyed the time with them, so it's been good. But and the commentary stuff's, they're again happy to have me keep coming back, so I'll just keep doing that as long as they like me doing it. But it sort of makes it good. It keeps everything fresh, and I've sort of reassessed where you're at with little hiccups you have in your life here and there, and I sort of really feel like I just want to have fun and enjoy what I'm doing all the time, and stay happy, and that keeps me happy, and evidently keeps my employers happy as well. So that's sort of where I'm at the moment. It's just keep having a good time.
And what
So
about
we're not opening a gym bar?
Yeah, we'll still have to do that too. Yeah.
Okay.
Mobile gym bar.
Yeah, mobile.
We've got that idea as well over here. Mel, I know you're in lockdown for another 6 weeks now, but and it's kind of faltered your commentating this year. But what do you think? What do you hope is next for you?
Look, we're actually really looking forward to the summer that's coming up. We've got another World Cup just around the corner, all things going well, in New Zealand as well. And there's, I think the other thing does quite stupidly, I mean, it's quite a fake space sometimes, the old media, isn't it? But it does allow you to have a voice in different areas that you probably haven't had before. So there's some pretty exciting things in the women's sports space here in Australia that we're trying to get up and develop. And I think that's one of the nice things, probably women's sport here in Australia since 2015 has been quite a collaborative approach from a lot of the different codes, which has been completely different to the guys. Usually AFL and league and soccer / football and cricket in the men's are always sort of clashing and trying to coach players and do all these sorts of things. Whereas within the women's sports space, it's a really collaborative kind of, supportive thing. So when the Australia and New Zealand won the bid to host the FIFA World Cup in 2023, all the other women's sports, the netball and cricket and everything were right behind that bid. Likewise for basketball 2021. So there's some really exciting things coming up in Australia to hopefully be involved in.
Really good. Well, best of luck with all of those things coming up, and no doubt there'll be a few curveballs that we'll be excited to have a look at. Thank you so much for coming on the Slip, Cordon, Mel Jones and Julia Price. We'll see you next time.
Too easy.